So over the past week or so, I've been working pretty tirelessly to create the most comprehensive community resource for the presidential range that's existed thus far. Well, other than Fatmap, but we all kind of know what happened to Fatmap recently. Over the past month or so, I've received probably 200 direct messages about Fatmap, and I've really learned how important this was for the community. So I've been working to create a new resource that has every line in the presidentials with a description, with an accurate 5 feet line drawn into the map, and all of them are in one place. So you can open this map and use this resource to navigate, to research, to plan your tours, and just really to be inspired by. I'm going to explain a little bit of the history of how I came to be creating this resource, why I believe it is the most accurate thing that's out there, the most detailed and comprehensive, and how you can get access to it, because it's going to be a little bit more complicated than what I did on Fatmap. So essentially, let's start from the beginning. When I was 16 or so, I got a random message on Facebook direct messages by some dude who claimed to run the local expert community on Fatmap. This is back when Fatmap had just come out, and it was just like cutouts of a 3D mapping software for individual ski resorts. And it was mostly European stuff and a couple resorts out west, and they started to expand into out east, and the out west stuff was already not super accurate. I downloaded the Big Sky one, and you guys know me, I've skied pretty much every piece of terrain off of Lone Peak except for like a couple obscurities. And even as a non-Big Sky local, I could see that like they were struggling to get things accurate from just not having feet on the ground in every resort. And the way it worked back then is you could pay extra money to have the free ride version of maps, which essentially they coded in stuff that wasn't marked on the trail map, but was still skiable. So they ended up creating this thing called the local expert community, and they ended up reaching out to a bunch of people, myself included. Eventually, I forget the guy's name. God, it was so long ago, but my contact reached out to me via email. I guess this guy really wanted me bad, and essentially said to me that they were trying to look for people to join their local expert community, and he was going to pay me to write stuff in for Fatmap at $10 a line. So I, as somebody who's trained to be really weary of scams, was a little nervous when I got the Facebook direct message, but when I got the email and I saw the guy's credentials, I decided, all right, I'm gonna go through with this. So I started with Sugar Bush. That was the first one they offered, and I was getting paid $10 a line to put like literally just like unmarked glades that you could find by accident, like always tracked up. Like I wasn't giving away the like super secret stash for money, but I was definitely accepting some money to put some stuff like the church and Paradise Chutes that weren't on the trail map, but were skiable into this map. So I made like $700. I think they thought I was going to add like 3 things, but I ended up making bank on this, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to keep working with these guys. The next one I did was Stowe, and by this point, they had stopped paying me because they announced that they were going to expand to their map of the world. I still was pretty passionate about the work I was doing. I felt like it was a really cool resource, so I wrote in the Stowe lines next. And when they finally expanded to the map of the world, obviously they can't pay everybody in the world to write them, so I kept doing stuff for free. And at this point, I'd made the full transition to not just being a resort skier who backcountry skis sometimes, but I'm like, I want to do uphill as like a really significant part of my ski season. And I'd gotten into skiing in the White Mountains and had, quickly worked through a lot of the Tuckerman Ravine stuff. And I noticed that in the backcountry touring in the Northeast Facebook group, in the spring, there was this dynamic that was going on that seemed a little unfortunate of newer people wanting to know what they should bring, or what to expect for their first time in Tuckerman Ravine, and people who are maybe more established kind of shaming them or discouraging them from doing it, basically saying like, this is too hazardous, you probably aren't ready, you shouldn't do it. And the reality is, like, I've been a new person at something. Whenever somebody tells me, oh, you should never do that, like, you're not ready for it, like, you should do all this stuff first, instead of giving me actual advice on, like, how I can best be equipped for the thing I want to do, I'm probably going to just be like, oh, fuck that guy, and I'm going to go do it. So I figured, if people want the information and if people are likely to just go anyway, the best thing we can give them is the most accurate information. So I thought that making this mapping resource would be a great way to bridge the gap between people who have experience and people who are trying to gain experience. So I coded in all of the lines in Tuckerman Ravine, the Tuckerman Ravine Trail, and the Sherb. I wrote this stuff when I was like 17 going on like 18, so it wasn't the most perfect thing I ever did. I ended up editing a lot, but it was really cool. I got a lot of mixed feedback. I had some people who thought I was the worst thing that ever happened to the community, and I had some people who thought it was really cool. Essentially, at that point, guidebooks in Fatmap weren't something that could be written by just anyone. So I actually even went a step further, and I decided to reach out to Fatmap directly and get them to take all these lines and code them into a backcountry guidebook. So you could just click one button and all of Tuckerman Ravine would pop up, and you could read about the best approach, the things you need to know about the descent, and all of the hazards that you'd encounter on the line. And I think that's the most important thing. How can we provide inspiration, but also not let it be sort of understated what the hazards are? How can we make sure that people are informed about all of the ways this line can get you in deep trouble, and all of the reasons why it's worth doing should you have the conditions, the partners, and the experience line up? So a couple of years later, fast forward, presidential skiing came out, and I decided that I was going to attempt to ski every single line in the guidebook. It was just a big undertaking for me, and honestly a life-changing experience. But essentially, I have 7 or so routes left where we're standing now, out of the 91 that are in the book. So I have probably some of the most intimate knowledge of every way that water drains out of the presidential range, with just feet on the ground. And I don't know the exact number that Kurt skied, but I know he's told me he hasn't skied everything in the book. Neither have I. But I'd imagine that of the people that ski in this range, the two of us probably have the most knowledge of what's actually in there. So as I went through this project, I continued over time skiing these routes, adding them to Fatmap, and creating this huge map of the presidentials. And it was really awesome. And I would say, for as many people that met me in the range and told me that they followed the YouTube, I had just as many that thanked me for the Fatmap, which meant a lot, including people who said that they had used it on their tours. So I decided to just continue expanding this resource until one day on my recent road trip this fall, I started getting messages that were a little bit nerve-wracking, that everything was going to be migrated to Strava, and what was I going to do about it? And at first it was like 2 messages, then it went to like 30 the next day. So I started getting in a panic because I'm like, what am I going to do if all this stuff gets migrated to Strava? Lo and behold, Strava did acquire the data and do something with it, but they didn't migrate it in a way that's tangible. I've had one person reach out to me and tell me they found like some of my sugar bush lines, but it's not the same. It's not the same as it was. Effectively, this really cool mapping thing that I spent, you know, the better part of 4 years slowly building just dissolved. And I realized through all of the messages that I had gotten that this was important to the community and that people were using this, people were appreciating it. So I decided to start remaking it. I put something out there that essentially said, you know, what should I use? What is similar to Fatmap that I can create a bunch of content, have it all be in one folder, and publish it so everyone can have it. And I got all sorts of different answers, but the one that was consistent was CalTopo. So if you're sick of hearing the history of how and why I did this, hopefully I'll try and put like a timestamp in the video that you can skip to this part. But this is where I'm actually going to explain how this works and how you can get access to it. So I'm going to pull it up right now. So I basically redid this from scratch. A lot of people were telling me how to export the files and put them into something else. I decided I wasn't going to do that, and I was actually just going to start over. So over the last like week and a half, I essentially wrote and drew an entire guidebook from memory, all starting from scratch, which was kind of a pain in the ass, but it's here now, and I'm super proud of this. I knew I could write these things better than I did when I was 18, and a lot of this stuff, not only have I skied new things, but I've skied stuff, you know, 6 or 7 times now, so I have seen it in late spring conditions, early spring conditions, mid-winter, lean years, fat years, so I kind of can identify some trends. So essentially, this is the map. The folder is called Presidential Range Community Resource, and it has the majority of the chunk of stuff in this area right here, and it also has the Mount Webster stuff kind of far away. If I zoom in, you can see here's the Mount Webster stuff. Everything has a label. There's the Mountaineers Route, the Central Couloir, Green Chasm, Shoestring, Gully, the labels down here. But if I scroll over here, there's a bunch of stuff. The Mount Franklin, and Oaks Gulf areas, the Gulf of Slides, Tuckerman, Huntington. And there's a little bit of method to my madness here that I'm going to explain, because it's not just all of it coded into a map. If you click on individual lines, like Damnation Gully, it has a description. Every single line that I wrote has a full description that explains the best approaches. I have multiple options for approach described, what the descent is like and what you're going to encounter. Part of what makes these descriptions awesome is in presidential skiing, sometimes it mentions you may need a rappel in this section, but because I've had to ski all these for this project, I actually have the rappel anchor beta, which is something that nobody else has published. And I'm really happy to get this out there, because like it's kind of a pain in the ass to ski a ski mountaineering line not knowing what you're going to use for your anchor. And so you have like, you know, 10 pitons, a rack of nuts, like 2 different sizes of ice screw, a little stuff sack in case you need to fill it with snow and build a dead man anchor. And you end up using like 3 nuts. You're like, my backpack could have been so much lighter. So for Shoestring, Damnation, Odell's, a lot of these lines that I did use rappels for, I have specific anchor beta, or if not specifics, just kind of what you can expect. Like Odell's is kind of like a really cruxy anchor situation, because there's honestly not a good one. So I talk about that a little bit. So that's one aspect of this. Another thing that I have that's important is the color coding. So right now, I haven't developed a color scheme specifically for these lines. All of the multicolored ones are just ski lines. The things to take note of are gray and black. Gray lines, like here, Tuckerman Ravine Trail, are just standard approaches. So you can see I added and the Noosnick Ravine Trail, which is a great way to get to Lake of the Clouds and the Oaks Gulf areas. I added the Jewel Trail as a cog alternative. I added King Ravine via the short line. Those are kind of standard approaches. Black is a little bit different here. So here you can see I have Tuckerman to Oaks Connect. I have Gulf of Slides, Tucks Connect. I have the Mount Jefferson approach. I put these in a different color because these are non-standard approaches. These are things that I wanted to offer that are all from personal experience, and they're not like a sort of standard like guidebook essay description. They're more of a me statement of, in the times that I have connected these two features, this is what I've encountered, and this is what I would describe as the best way to do it. Because we obviously know, like, okay, you can get to Tucks from Gulf of Slides. We know you can get into Oaks from Tucks or from Monroe Brook. We know you can get to Jefferson Ravine from Adams or from Jefferson. But I, in doing this project, have had to connect these ravines and do these approaches every possible way you can do them. So here I offer suggestions of what I personally think is the most efficient way to connect terrain, and kind of what you can expect. Like every single time I've connected Tuckerman Ravine to Oaks, there's been a little protected vein of snow that I've been able to ski that leads me roughly to the top of the buttress lines. That's obviously subject to change. That's why it's kind of like with a grain of salt statement. Like you could be up there and it could be all rock. You could be up there, but it's wind scoured. But I've done this approach a bunch of times in spring conditions, in midwinter, after a big wind event, after a big snow event. And that little vein of snow was always there. So I describe it because it's likely that if in all these different conditions it shows up, maybe this is something that's pretty consistent. It might not be there, but you can kind of expect it to be there. And being able to ski in this direction in 15 minutes as opposed to walking there in like 45 is super efficient. So I wanted to kind of offer that beta up. How you can get this, I talked to some people who do CalTopo stuff, and they all encourage me that I shouldn't just make it all public, because whenever there's a bunch of public lines in the same place, it can make things really slow to scroll around. And I haven't done much examination of like what's public and what's out there, but I don't want it to be slow and sucky. I kind of want this resource to be contained where you can find all of this stuff and just this stuff. And I'm gonna have it be by a share link only. I'm gonna put that link in the description. I'm gonna put it in the comments. I'm gonna put it in the posts of everywhere I promote this map, and you can share it with your friends. I want this file to be something that is like reliable, unchanging. Some dude isn't gonna like post their track from like, you know, oh, like I went up this ravine like the worst possible way you can do it, and I got lost, and I like dropped a ski and I had to run back down and get it, and I like went over here, and now this weird track that's all zigzaggy is like clustered over the map. I want it to be like what it is. And maybe that's a little bit of my ego talking, but like I'm proud of how I did this, and I don't want it to get messed up, so other people can enjoy it for what it is and how clean and unmessy it happens to be in the moment. So I may choose to make it all public later on. I'm gonna try the share link thing. This is a developing situation. I'm gonna rely on you guys who have been messaging me in full force, who, when I asked for like a DM for a mapping service recommendation, like 100 of you or 200 of you showed out in full force. Like literally my phone's dinging left and right. Use this map, use this one. Oh, bummer about Fatmap. I love the Fatmap. You guys really showed out for me when I was trying to fix this problem that happened with the Fatmap Strava situation. I want you guys to continue to show out with me and recommending me how I can make this more available to the community. If I have any random typos, because like I said, I ground this out in like a week. If there's something I should update, if there's things that you think should be added to the map, please hit me up and let's like continue to make this better for everybody, because this is for y'all. Like, I don't want this to just be like, oh, Ryan knows so much and he's so great. I want this to be like, wow, I find this really useful. Like, I would love it if my professors at VTSU like dropped this file to students when they plan advanced backcountry. I'd love it if like ARI courses drop this file to their students for tour planning. I want this to be like the best community resource that's out there and be useful to everybody. So please keep letting me know. Like I said, link is going to be in the pinned comment and in the description. Check this map out. Let me know what you think. Thank you for watching.
Good job.